I used to believe that life settles down once you reach a certain age. That after years of struggle, sacrifice, and raising children, peace would finally come knocking. But peace never came for me. Before starting story, tell me in comment, where are you watching from? I'd love to hear your city. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for Grandma True Stories for more real-life tales of courage, love, and resilience. At 70, I found myself starting over, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. It happened the year my youngest daughter passed away. She left behind 6 little children, each with eyes too innocent to understand loss, and hearts too fragile to face what came next. No one else stepped forward. Not their father. Not my relatives. Just me, and my trembling hands. I remember the day the social worker came to the house. She spoke gently, like she didn't want to hurt me more than I already was. "Mrs. Vance," she said, "you don't have to do this. We can find them a foster home." Her words felt like knives. How could I let strangers raise the last pieces of my daughter? Those kids were all I had left of her. So I looked her in the eye and said, "No. They stay with me." From that day on, my small, quiet home became a battlefield of noise, laughter mixed with crying, bedtime stories drowned by bills I couldn't pay. My pension was barely enough for one person, let alone 7. Some nights, I skipped meals so the children wouldn't have to. But hunger wasn't the hardest part. Loneliness was. People around me disappeared one by one. Friends stopped visiting, they said I was too busy. Even my own son, who lived just 2 towns away, avoided my calls. He said he couldn't handle the noise. I learned to smile anyway. For the children, I wore strength like armor. But every night, when the lights went out, I whispered prayers into the dark, asking God for just one more day of endurance. Still, I had no idea that my real test was yet to come. Because one morning, while I was sweeping the porch, a man in a dark coat walked up to my gate. He had a letter in his hand, and the look on his face told me it wasn't good news. That envelope would change everything, not just for me, but for the 6 little lives depending on me. The man didn't say much, just handed me the letter and offered a polite nod. His eyes carried the weight of something he couldn't explain, and before I could ask a single question, he turned and walked away. The envelope was thin, official-looking, and cold against my trembling fingers. For a moment, I just stood there on the porch, staring at it, afraid to open it, afraid of whatever truth might be waiting inside. Inside, I found a folded document and a short note. It said my daughter had left behind a debt, a large one. Her medical bills. Her credit cards. Her unpaid rent. And somehow, my name was on it. I felt my knees weaken. I sat down on the porch steps and read it again, hoping I had misunderstood. But the numbers didn't change. Neither did the name Eleanor Vance. Mine. It didn't seem fair. I had spent my whole life paying for other people's mistakes, and now, even in death, my daughter's choices were reaching back to pull me under. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat in the kitchen, listening to the quiet breathing of 6 little souls in the next room. The sound reminded me why giving up wasn't an option. So the next morning, I took action. I pulled out my old sewing machine, the same one I'd used when I was a young mother trying to make ends meet. The motor still worked, though it groaned like my old bones. I started stitching again, mending torn clothes for neighbors, fixing curtains, even making dresses out of scrap fabric. The money was little, but it was something. Days turned into weeks. The house smelled of fabric and soup. The children laughed again, chasing each other around the small living room. For the first time in months, Hope didn't feel like a stranger. Then one evening, I got a knock on the door. It was my son, the same one who hadn't visited in months. He stood there with a forced smile, holding a box of groceries. "I heard you've been busy," he said. I wanted to hug him, but something in his tone made me hesitate. He looked around the house, his eyes scanning the children, the sewing machine, the stacks of cloth. Then he said something that froze me completely. "Mom, maybe it's time to sell this house." What he said next shattered what little strength I had left, and revealed a truth I wasn't ready to face. Sell the house? For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. My son, my only surviving child, stood in my doorway with the same expression he wore as a boy when he wanted something he shouldn't have. But this time, his eyes were colder. More calculating. "Mom, you're too old to handle all this," he continued, gesturing around at the children and the cluttered living room. "You can't keep living like this. You need to think about your future." I stared at him in silence. My future was standing right in front of me, 6 children who depended on me for love, warmth, and stability. But that wasn't the future he was talking about. I asked him softly, "Why now, David? After all these months, why come now?" He sighed, avoiding my eyes. Then, with a rehearsed tone, he said, "A buyer made an offer. A good one. I could help you move into a small apartment. You'd have less stress, more rest." I felt my stomach tighten. He didn't say it, but I heard the real message underneath. He wanted the money. For years, I had trusted him with decisions, with advice, even with the little savings I had left. And now, he wanted to take the only thing that still belonged to me, the house my husband built with his hands 40 years ago. The walls seemed to close in as his words echoed through the room. The children watched from the hallway, sensing the tension they couldn't understand. I forced a smile for them, pretending everything was fine. Then I turned back to David and said quietly, "No. This house stays. As long as I breathe, these children will have a home." His expression hardened. "You're making a mistake," he said, grabbing his coat. Then he left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. That night, I sat by the sewing machine, stitching in the dim light. Tears blurred my vision, but my hands didn't stop. Every thread felt like a promise that no one, not even my own blood, would take away what little we had left. Weeks passed, and I didn't hear from him again. Bills piled higher, and my body grew weaker, but I refused to surrender. The children began helping me, folding fabric, delivering small orders, even baking cookies to sell. We became a family built on scraps and faith. Then one morning, an envelope arrived in the mail. This time, it wasn't a debt notice. It was something else entirely. Inside that envelope was a letter that would change everything, a letter that carried the truth about my daughter's past, and the key to our future. I held the envelope in my hands, feeling the weight of what might lie inside. The paper was thick, crisp, like it had been prepared carefully, waiting for the right moment to be opened. My heart pounded as I slid out the letter. It was from her, not my son, not anyone trying to manipulate me. It was from my daughter. Her handwriting was familiar, even after all these years, the curves and loops echoing the little girl who once clutched my hand in the grocery store, who traced her name in crayon on my kitchen table. Mother, it began. The word caught me in my throat. For decades, that word had been whispered in memories, lost in time, replaced by silence, lies, and ambition. I read on. She wrote about the choices she had made, the ways she had tried to erase the past, to build a life that the world would admire. She confessed the hurt she had caused me, the push, the lies, the stories told to reporters and investors. And yet, she didn't ask for forgiveness outright. She didn't plead. She simply told me the truth. She spoke of regret, of longing, of the emptiness she had carried even amidst her fortune. She admitted she had never truly forgotten me. She admitted she had tried to live a life free from shame but had failed to understand that love isn't something you can manufacture for show. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I folded the letter, letting each word sink in. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel betrayal. I felt relief that the truth was out, that the story of my life would no longer be a shadow behind someone else's mask. I went to the kitchen window and looked at the orange tree outside. The fruit hung heavy and bright, the blossoms swaying gently in the breeze. It was still there, still growing, still a symbol of patience, endurance, and the quiet power of roots. I realized then that it didn't matter if the world had forgotten me for a while. I was here. I had endured. And like the tree, my life had borne fruit, in ways no one could take from me. I sat back, letter in hand, and let the memories wash over me. The hospital floors, the nights spent sewing, the long walks to school with trembling hands, all of it mattered. All of it was mine. No one could rewrite that. Later, I placed the letter in the tin box where I kept all the pieces of my past. I opened the window and set it on the sill next to a single orange, letting the moonlight fall across it. I breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the years lift slightly from my shoulders. Outside, children played. Neighbors waved. Life continued, steady and unwavering. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not for anyone else. Not for the world. For me. Because I had survived. Because love, in its purest form, endures beyond betrayal, beyond time, beyond recognition. Because roots don't need applause, they simply hold. And I, like my orange tree, held firm. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people remember. No matter how old you are, it's never too late to stand up for yourself.